Welcome back to Uncovering the Cover, American Woman, the story of how an anti-war song became a number one hit. We've already covered the history behind the creation of the song and its deep meaning protesting the Vietnam War in an era where songs that opposed the war were banned from radio stations. But that was back in 1970. American Woman was the biggest hit ever for the Canadian rock band The Guess Who are still out there with a different lineup performing all the fan favorites. The war, of course, ended in 1975 with the reunification of North and South Vietnam, and the country is still to this day a socialist republic recognized by almost 180 countries and a member of the United Nations since 1977. 29 years after the success of American Woman by The Guess Who, the song was released as the third single from the soundtrack of the motion picture Austin Powers' The Spy Who Shagged Me, but this time it was covered by rock star Lenny Kravitz. It wasn't as successful in the charts as its original version, but this new rendition was selected by Kravitz himself as one of the 15 songs that have defined his life in an article published by Rolling Stone magazine in 2018. Kravitz even won his second Grammy Award in 2000 for Best Male Rock Vocal Performance with American Woman, beating Bruce Springsteen and Chris Cornell, among others. In fact, it was one of the 4 consecutive Grammy Awards for Kravitz in this category. From 1999 to 2002, Kravitz won the award for Best Male Rock Vocal Performance every single time with Fly Away, American Woman, Again, and Dig In.
I've been searching for you. I heard a cry within my soul. I never had a yearning quite like this before. Now you are walking right through my door. All of my life, where have you been? I wonder if I'll ever see you again.
But it wasn't always a successful path to stardom for Kravitz. Born in New York City to famous actress Rosie Rocker and a white Jewish TV producer, Seymour Kravitz, Lenny grew up in an affluent household living in the Upper East Side of Manhattan. Kravitz's father exposed him to music at a very young age thanks to his work. Seymour Kravitz, who later shortened his name to Cy Kravitz, worked for NBC but also as a jazz promoter and opened the doors for Lenny, who fell in love with jazz and rhythm and blues quickly at a young age. His dad's connection to that world influenced him greatly, and artists like Michael Jackson, Ella Fitzgerald, James Brown, and Aretha Franklin became guiding principles in his music later on. On VH1's Behind the Music, Kravitz says that the first concert his dad ever took him to was the Jackson 5 at Madison Square Garden when he was only 6 years old. It was then he realized he wanted to become a musician and even wanted to be one of the members of the Jackson 5. But, as fate would have it, Kravitz ended up working in the future with Jackson. The song I Can't Make It Another Day from the album Michael in 2000, a compilation of previously unreleased tracks, and the first one after Jackson's death, featured vocals, guitars, and was produced by Kravitz. Also, in 2018, the song Low on Kravitz's 11th album, Raise Vibration, featured the traditional oohs in some vocals from Michael Jackson. Going back to Kravitz's upbringing, before he even turned 10 years old, he was already learning acoustic guitar and piano before moving to Los Angeles when his mother landed the role of Helen Willis on the hit sitcom The Jeffersons. In the series, her character was actually married to a white man just like in real life, and it became the first interracial couple to be shown on television in the US. The show lasted 11 seasons, and it's one of the longest-running sitcoms in American television. The move also allowed Kravitz to grasp the West Coast music scene, and he became a member of the California Boys Choir. According to the book Lenny Kravitz, The Life, the Genius, the Legend, by author James Court, the California Boys Choir was the second most prestigious boys' choir in the world after the Vienna Boys Choir in Austria. It was there where Kravitz learned about harmonies and had his first major concerts at a very young age, while continuing to teach himself to play the bass, the drums, and even appearing in some TV commercials thanks to his mom. Moving to California also exposed young Lenny to the sounds of Led Zeppelin, The Who, Jimi Hendrix, and he became a huge fan of Kiss. And to top it all off, he attended Beverly Hills High School, where he was classmates with none other than Saul Hudson, better known as Slash. The Guns N' Roses guitarist also had an interracial family with a black mother and a white father. But all of this, if you will, privileged upbringing, wouldn't help Kravitz in the beginning of his career. He was constantly rejected because his music was not black enough or white enough. Pop music was heavily dominated by white musicians, some of whom actually played black-influenced music. The Beatles, Elton John, Bee Gees, Eagles, and Rod Stewart mostly topped the charts, but Kravitz didn't fit in a specific genre or social label, which proved difficult for him to break into mainstream. His music was a reflection of everything he grew up with, a mix of different music genres, and he was seen as a black musician but not playing what music labels thought was traditional black music. But Kravitz stayed loyal to his music, especially after he found tremendous inspiration in another multifaceted and multi-instrumental artist who would later become his friend, Prince. Dirty Mind, the third album from Prince, released in 1980, captivated Kravitz and made a huge impact in what his music would become. Because Kravitz couldn't find a record deal to produce an album, a friend recommended him to do it all on his own, just like Prince would do it. And he started making his own recordings, playing almost all the instruments. He even changed his artistic name to Romeo Blue, but that didn't prove any success, and he eventually went back to Lenny Kravitz. Finally, everything changed when he met the love of his wife.
It all really started when I got married and I fell in love with my wife, and she is like the female version of me. We're almost like twins, and I think I saw myself in her, and for the first time I really got a clear look at myself through that.
Kravitz married young actress Lisa Bonet, who at 20 years old was already a celebrity thanks to The Cosby Show. They were very similar indeed. Just like Kravitz, Bonet came from a multiracial and musical family, a white Jewish mother who was a music teacher, and an African-American father who was an opera singer. Apart from all the sensationalism in the media about their relationship, it provided Kravitz with outstanding inspiration, which derived in his 1989 debut album, Let Love Rule.
Love is gentle
music video for that song was actually directed by Lisa Bonet. Since then, Kravitz has published 11 albums and has gained important recognition in the music scene, including 5 top 40 hits in the US, and as we've mentioned before, he's won 4 Grammy Awards, including 1 for the song we are uncovering in this episode. In contrast to the Guess Who original version, this cover had a slower and softer tempo, and Kravitz deliberately didn't include the iconic guitar solo of the song. According to Randy Bachman, the guitarist from the Guess Who, Kravitz told him that he tried, but in the end, he couldn't get the sound or the tone, so he left the song without the solo. Bachman originally didn't like Kravitz's version, and he said to Spinner Canada in 2010, quote, "He didn't do my guitar solo, which is kind of the signature of the song. I was sent 5 different versions of it, and all 5 of them confused me." In the end, Bachman recalls that his daughter was the one who made him change his mind. Quote, "Suddenly, my daughter, who at the time was 13 or 14, came home from school saying, 'Dad, all my girlfriends at school think you're so cool. Lenny Kravitz has done your song, and it's in Austin Powers.' And I went, so he's really done something that's touched a younger generation," said Bachman to Spinner.
Listen what I say. Don't come hanging round my door. Don't wanna see your face no more. I don't need your war machines. I don't need your ghetto scenes. Color lights can hypnotize. Sparkle someone else's eyes. Now, woman, get away. American woman, listen what I say. American woman, stay away from me.
Another change from the original version is that Kravitz's cover was not a proper anti-war song, but it gave American Woman a feeling of being focused on the sex appeal of a woman, which is highly portrayed on the music video where American actress Heather Graham dances provocatively to the tune of the song. Graham is also one of the protagonists of the Austin Powers movie. But the way Kravitz came to American Woman was not the traditional route of a musician liking a song so much that he wants to cover it. Instead, he was approached by one of the producers of the soundtrack. This is Kravitz talking on an interview with Sirius XM Radio.
I got a call from Guy Osiri, who was dealing with the Spy Who Shagged Me soundtrack and movie, and he says, "We want you to cut American Woman for the movie." And I thought, what am I going to do with that? It's like it's perfect. It's amazing. Like I'm not going to touch that song. He said, "Just try it. Just do it." I was in Miami at the time. I think I started it there. I said, "Okay, let me try and mess with it." And so I got into it and I listened to it and I found my way. I started cutting it. It came out and it was like, then they're like, "You got to make this video. We're getting traction." We made this big video.
Yeah.
Heather Graham was in it. Huge song, Grammy. Like I was like, it's amazing. But the beautiful thing was then Burton Cummings and called me
From the Guess Who.
Yeah, and was like, "Thank you so much." And I love.
I'm sure he liked getting the publishing
I love
too.
what you did, and he was. That's the whole thing. There were some new houses bought. There was
You just bought a car, Lenny. Thanks.
There was a tour. No, they were talking about houses. Houses. They were buying houses, man. And they went back on tour.
Yeah.
And so that was the beautiful thing. Like I made a friend. I honored him with the cover. He liked it a lot, and then it was a win-win for everybody. So it was like, and then I ended up meeting them. I went up to Much Music in Canada and got to meet them. I think we even played it together. But that was a very interesting thing because I had no idea what to do with that song. And next thing it's like one of these songs that like there's a lot of people that don't realize that it's the Guess Who. They think it's my song. I'm like, no, it's not mine.
Although it wasn't the most successful single of his career, many people think it's an original song by Lenny Kravitz. And as we've noted, it was part of a very successful era of his career. But even if Randy Bachman, the guitarist from the Guess Who invented the iconic guitar riff, didn't like Kravitz's version in the beginning, he then said a few years ago, quote, he reinvented the song for himself. Basically, you've got to get it, strip it down, and make it your own. It's like moving into a house. You gotta kind of make some of the rooms your own. You can't go with somebody else's decorations.
American woman, stay away from me. American woman.
Released as a single from the Austin Powers' The Spy Who Shagged Me movie, the song would later be included on a re-edition of Kravitz's fifth album, simply called 5, which exposed Kravitz to an even bigger international audience thanks to the song Fly Away, which became number 1 in a few countries, including the UK.
I wish that I could fly into the sky so very high, just like a dragonfly. I'd fly above the trees, over the seas, in all degrees, to anywhere I please.
During the recording for his following album called Lenny in Miami, Florida, Kravitz was arrested by the police when he was walking to the gym because allegedly he matched the description of a bank robber. He wasn't carrying any identification with him at that specific moment, and the police didn't believe he was actually Lenny Kravitz. He was eventually released only because the bank teller who was robbed recognized he was not the thief. From this absurd experience, Kravitz wrote the song Bank Robber Man, where he expressed his discontent for this act of racial profiling.
We got a man. We got the bank robber man. We don't need no reason. You're going in the can. You look like the bank robber man.
Apart from the second Austin Powers movie, Kravitz has also had important participation in other motion pictures like Bad Boys 2, where he collaborated in one of the songs for the soundtrack with P. Diddy and Pharrell. He made his acting debut in the 2009 film Precious, and he's also seen in the first 2 The Hunger Games movies. Kravitz, who's always said he doesn't like to be labeled, has always been very outspoken against racism throughout his career. His 9th album, Black and White America, was inspired in part as a response to the racism existing in the US.
Martin Luther King, he had
He said to USA Today in 2011, "I was channel surfing in the Bahamas one night and I came across this documentary. It had all these people talking about President Obama, how they didn't approve of his being elected and wanted to take their country back any way they could. I know that there's racism, but to hear people voice it in such a hateful way, I had to write a rebuttal." He then continued, quote, "Race in this country is still the elephant in the room that no one wants to discuss."